Hello, anti-novelists. It is a cold and rainy Saturday, so what better to do than dive into the library and let's write some fiction. I got a question over in my writing group from Emily, and she asks, V, how do you go about tracking and sorting your scenes into your book as you're writing? Okay, that's kind of a cool question. So I'm going to answer that here because it directly relates to what we're talking about in plotting. One of the first ways that I track things, which some of you already know, is I use what I call the plot sandwich. The plot sandwich is 4 discs, which you would use in a Happy Planner disc system. And I've used my mushroom punch and I've punched 4 holes. So that allows me to take this little sandwich of note cards and turn it into a mini filing system. In that way, I'm looking at Act 1. I can say, okay, what needs to happen in Act 1? Well, I've got a card that says meet the book. So I know that that needs to happen in Act 1. And I've got a card that says Clover offensive, meet Branch, meet Jet, Rango, and Buck. So those are characters and items that need to happen in Act 1. So early on in the planning, I'm using my plot sandwich just to tab in things where I think they might go. If I go over here to the end of Act 2, to the midpoint, I've got a card highlighted pink so I know at a glance it's Tara. Midpoint. Tara must face her greatest fear, own her weakness, and step into her power. So that's the victim to warrior card, okay? And that is what's going to happen right at the end of Act 2 and launch us into Act 3. So that's one way that I sort scenes and story units into potential chapters and just keep dialing that in. So then how do I track it? I began early on with what I call a first line index. This is an Excel spreadsheet, and over here down the left margin, I've got numbers and I've got corresponding tabs. So the number A1, which indicates either a chapter or a scene, is behind tab A, which is in a huge 4-inch 3-ring binder that I call the Beast. So if I go to tab A, I'm going to find the chapter, Meet the Book, and then I've written for myself the first line. The Nelson Atkins Museum air is so dry, okay? So in this way, very early on, before I have anything sorted into proper scenes or acts or plot points, I'm just keeping a running list of items that I can refer back to when I have enough story that I can start putting them in the order that they need to go. So the first line index is how I begin tracking all the scenes that I've written so that I can go back at a glance and know which is which, and then I can start putting them in order. So you can see this says sequenced in book, and there's only 3 of these highlighted. So that tells you out of this whole page of scenes, I only used 3 of these, okay? So you may end up tossing out more than half of what you write, but this is an easy way to track it so that you can make those choices that serve your story. Then I have this tracker. This one came about a year after the one that I just showed you. This is actually broken down by act. So I've got Act 1, and this says Thursday. So on Thursday, I've got these 3 chapters, and I've got my word counts. I've got a quick note of next edits or things that I need to remember. And then over here, I've got little proof hash marks telling me which scenes and chapters have been proofread, so I know that I'm done with those for where I currently am in the story. So on Friday, I've got chapters 4 through 16. On Saturday, I've got chapters 17 through 27. So this is showing you after I have fleshed out my first lines. Oopsie, I just dropped my keyboard. I know all my first lines. I have a sense of what things are going to look like, and then I can start sequencing them into an actual act sheet that tells me where they go and what they're going to look like. You've also seen this one. This is my master structure guidelines, okay? This is really breaking down what the potential points for a chapter could be. So let's look deeper at where we left off in the last video at what could go in chapter 1. Excuse me, Act 1, which is your first chapters. So here I've got a really bad day, I've got something peculiar, and I've got grasping at straws. Those are 3 items taken from Derek Murphy's training, which I absolutely love. You should definitely check out Derek Murphy. I will link below. But then I have my own notes, additional plot beats for prompting the story. I've got the known or limited awareness. I've got the character in the normal world. Something creates a want or a desire. How does the character try to fulfill that? There's tension, frustration, and disappointment. There could be a moral or ethical dilemma. What if your character does the right thing for the wrong reason? And that's the catapult into the story. Okay, so you're just looking at these as touch points that give you ideas for how can you challenge your character? How can you move them along? I've got the empathy or the care motivator. This is where you establish why readers are rooting for your character because they like them. Situations that reveal the theme of the story. Also situations that answer the dramatic question. Remember, every story inherently should have a good dramatic question. Will this character beat the odds? Will these characters meet and fall in love? That's your basic dramatic question, and it drives the story. There's trouble brewing or mysterious events. There's something revealing or embarrassing. Your main character meets a mentor. Ultimately, make your reader a promise. This is what I call the offering. Ultimately, you're offering these characters and the conflicts that you're throwing at them to the reader as a reason why this story is worth sticking with and worth reading it through to the end. So I'm going to leave this there because in the next segment, we will go into the next group of possible drivers that take us through the story, and I'll give you some of my examples. So I hope that's getting you started. Start thinking about how you can challenge those characters and what things you can throw at them, and then start writing because it's all about words on the page. See you next time.